Hello, School Transportation Nation. Tony Corpin here. We're glad you made it to the podcast. This episode is brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software, by Propane, energy for everyone, and by First Student, the largest provider of student transportation in North America. A little later, Taylor Equitani is going to be talking with Superintendent Dr. Kimberly Rizzo Saunders, another AASA finalist for Superintendent of the Year, and Business Administrator Brian Cisneros from Contoocook Valley School District in New Hampshire. All right, before Ryan and I dive into the headlines, we've got a quick message from our sponsor. This message is brought to you by First Student, the largest provider of student transportation in North America. Transforming the school bus into an extension of the classroom, First Student's program First Serves redefines the student experience and behavior by seamlessly implementing proven classroom interventions on the bus. This innovative program ensures a cohesive support system tailored to each student's needs with advanced driver training and research-based interventions. First Serves paves the way for a safer, more supportive journey for every student. Visit firststudentinc.com/firstserves to learn more today. That's firststudentinc.com/firstserves. All right, Ryan, hit us with the latest and greatest. I know we had a fatal crash in Illinois that we had reported on last week. Absolutely devastating news for the families. The information is still hazy out there. Obviously, the news broke and we saw it on national media outlets like ABC, CBS. Can you break it down for the audience?
Yeah, Tony. So on Monday, March 11th, about 11:30 a.m. Central Time, in Rushville, Illinois, about 60 miles west of Springfield. For some reason, a school bus that was carrying three preschoolers, ages 5 and 3, drifted across the center line and struck a semi-truck that was carrying sand head on. Evidently, according to reports, the vehicles both became engulfed in flames and everyone died at the scene. Those two students, Maria Miller, 5, her brother Andrew Miller, 3, and Noah Driscoll, 3, along with their school bus driver Angela Spiker, 57, and the truck driver David Kufal, I believe you say is how you said his name, 72. Again, yeah, like you said, Tony, a tragedy. The kids saw pictures, at least, of Maria and Andrew, the brother and sister, so cute, and the horrific last moments of their life. It's just soul shattering that this happened. The NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, is investigating. We should probably see in the next couple of weeks an initial crash report come out from them, and it can take 12 to 18 months to get that full report. When I saw that the school bus drifted over the middle line, Tony, my thoughts immediately went to, was there a medical emergency that Angela Spiker suffered? We'll know more again as the investigation unfolds. But deepest condolences go out to the community out there in rural Western Illinois, all the families involved, the school district. Just very sad. And just the latest fatalities, they don't happen very often, but when they do, unfortunately, they can be catastrophic, like in this case. And it just always, when we see children killed, it's always a tragedy, but the younger they are, it becomes harder to take.
Yeah, I had quite a few people reach out to me on this one, and they were also looking at the photos, and it looks like a Type A vehicle, right? I don't think it was a C or D. It's definitely a short.
It was a Type A school bus, and it was a midday route. Obviously, they were preschoolers, so it was obviously some kind of midday, probably leaving the school and taking them home, from what I understand, for Schuyler Industry Schools out there in Western Illinois.
Yeah, and I had someone even ask to, was it a medical emergency? Were there other things involved? Obviously, the mainstream news media sensationalizes it a bit and asks if there's drugs or alcohol, and obviously if there's fatalities and a fire, who knows if they're going to be able to ascertain some of that information with what happened. But one other gentleman had reached out to me and said, this is very characteristic of a tire blowout. Typically, a medical emergency, the driver would veer right, not left. But you don't know, right? This situation could be anything. But I think it just lends me back to make sure, guys, keep an eye on the maintenance of the vehicles. Make sure and check your tires. Make sure tire pressure is important. Make sure and do those pre-checks. Make sure the drivers are going through those health checks. It just really harkens back to us being so diligent as an industry to keep our standards and our safety standards high so we don't see a tragedy like this again. This is just absolutely devastating news, Ryan.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, when it comes down again to what exactly happened, NTSB, their team of investigators, they're professionals. This is what they do. They deal with everything from any commercial aviation crash or incident on down to marine, on-road, highway infrastructure, bridges. So they are the foremost international experts at crash investigations and crash reconstruction. And they pour through all of the data. They will know Angela Stryker's full medical history. Autopsies will be performed, obviously, on the children and on the two drivers to find out exactly how they succumbed. But obviously, when you see something like this, it was, several years ago now that we had that school bus fire in Iowa. Different circumstances, not a crash per se, but it just, when you see these buses, just shells of themselves, and you look at this picture of this Type A bus, and it's just completely burned out. And again, your thoughts go to the families and to those who died in this horrific fire. It's just a horrible way to go.
Yeah, Ryan. We always talk about safety training and driver training, and that being kind of a paramount thing in school transportation and being sure everybody's up on all the latest and greatest. We did see, obviously, that we reported last week a rash of alcohol incidents where drivers were actually drinking, DUI level stuff. Mm-hmm. So, you really hope that wasn't a situation or a case in this circumstance. But like you said, more is going to be uncovered downstream. But I think, guys, it comes back to just being aware of all these kind of nuances within a transportation operation. And regardless with a school bus, we know they're built like tanks, right? But a Type A school bus is going to be a little more fragile, a little more, but being hit head on, there's just no survivability rate at any situation there. And it's just absolutely tragic.
Yeah, Type A school bus going against a semi-tractor hauling sand. That's not going to turn out well, and it didn't, unfortunately, and we lost 5 lives. But it's what can we learn from this? And as we learn more from the NTSB investigation, that will certainly drive a lot of conversations, depending upon their findings, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, we'll keep moving on the headlines, Ryan. What else we got on deck?
Yes, so the District of Columbia is back in the news, not for a good reason. And of course, you might be thinking, oh, yeah, what's good to be talking about in terms of the presidential election or Congress and the morass there in the swamp. But, looking at school busing in D.C., so many of you industry insiders and veterans will remember that, about 10, 12 years ago, the District of Columbia was put under court supervision for late school buses. Well, fast forward to today, and that is an issue once again, as in a lot of school districts, namely because of the driver shortage. Well, those late buses in District of Columbia have prompted a class action lawsuit filed by a handful of parents that are seeking declaratory and injunctive relief against the District of Columbia and the Office of State Superintendent of Education, or OSSE. So now the students in a District of Columbia that get those school busing services, those are students with disabilities. These are students who have transportation as a related service under IDEA. So there's about 4,100 students that in DC that are riding the school bus. And these allegations of these, or the ramifications, I should say, of these late or no-show buses are these parents are saying that they're violating IDEA as well as the American Disabilities Act and the Rehabilitation Act, as well as the DC Human Rights Act, because these late buses or no-show buses are depriving these students of equal opportunity to participate in and benefit from their education. It's also alleging that these late services are violating ADA's prohibition on unnecessary segregation, and that these students are, quote, suffering or will suffer irreparable harm. Now, these students, several of them have autism, or on the autism spectrum, I should say. There is one student who suffers from hydrocephalus and is nonverbal. There's a couple of the students who with autism that are nonverbal or are suffering seizures, as is the girl with hydrocephalus. So pretty substantial conditions that these students have. And this lawsuit basically says, hey, what we know in attending TSD conference and in our articles and in talking with all our experts across the nation, that a free and appropriate public education under IDEA, that's one of the main tenets of IDEA, that these parents are saying this is being violated. And, you know, they're saying that previous due process hearings to address these parents' concerns have been dismissed, so that their only course of action is to take them to court. So this was filed early this year. We will see how this progresses, but certainly as we look forward to TSD conference in November, when we have the great legal mind of Betsy Helfrich back with us, providing our legal keynote, certainly she is aware of this. We've already been in contact about this. We do know some people who are involved with this case. So as with all pending legal issues and legal cases, we'll be only able to know so much. But we've been down this road before. We've seen other instances of late buses because of driver shortages, Tony, and just goes to show you, especially when you're dealing with federal law, what some of the ramifications can be.
Ryan, do we know, is this a district operated fleet or are they contracted out?
This is district operated. So from what I can tell, I know that OSSE has traditionally operated its own buses. I'm not sure exactly if there are other contractors involved, but there are no contractors named in the lawsuit. So I do believe it is the district. The mayor is, in fact, mentioned in this lawsuit. So they are going after the Office of State Superintendent of Education.
Yeah, it might be an interesting case or use case for alternative student transportation. Obviously, if there are one-off students and the buses can't get there, clearly there are services available to support those students on the alternative side if the district is unable to actually follow through on their commitments. So I would definitely see a big challenge for them to defend why they can't provide service, since service is available to many out there using these alternative transportation services. So very interesting dilemma that they've put themselves in. And the fact that they dismissed the parents' concern. I mean, we've seen this before, Ryan. Remember, there was bullying incidents where parents' concerns were dismissed and then it escalated and becomes a bigger thing. So we hear this happening all the time where the schools just brush it aside, don't pay attention. And now here we have some active parents taking a very aggressive approach. Someone may think, others think this is their only recourse to help their children. So it's definitely going to be a topic of conversation this fall at the TSD conference in Frisco, Texas. Guys, if you want to save the date on that, that's November 7th through the 12th, I believe, in Frisco. Ryan, is that right? 7th through the 12th? Yep. TSDconference.com. So yeah, it'll be a great opportunity to talk more with the peer group about this subject. And I'm sure also ST and Expo will probably have more as well to dive into as we find out more and report on this, guys. stnonline.com.
So what's interesting, Tony, about alternative transportation, and we see in California, they have a new law there, and we're seeing other laws popping up or regulations in other states that are holding a lot of these alternative transportation companies and notably the transportation network companies to a more stringent standard, especially when it comes to alcohol and drug testing, which you'd think, and certainly everyone I speak to in the industry says, yes, absolutely, they should be subject to the same rules as school bus drivers. But it was interesting. I was reading an article in Cal Matters back from last spring that was talking about the, I guess you could say, unintended consequence of some of those stronger regulations, that it's making it harder for a lot of students who have no other way to get to school or are trying to address situations like what we're talking about with DC and in other places with late school buses and circumvent those issues and be able to get to school on time, that they're relying on these services. So it's really interesting to see that meeting between the need for safety and the need for kids to just get to school. There's this article that I mentioned in Cal Matters where this advocate for students in California, and particularly vulnerable youth, Georgina Rodriguez, she writes how she grew up in foster care and experiencing homelessness, and she relied on some of these alternative transportation companies to get to school. And her point is, hey, is this law undercutting that? So really interesting as we move forward. Again, we have that need for safety, but what is that costing students who are just trying to get to school? So absolutely developing situation there and plenty to talk about at TSD.
Great, Ryan. All right, before we get to our interview, we have a quick message from our sponsor. Do you remember a time when you could just cherry pick the best solution to run your school transportation operation? The best routing software may be one company. The best parent app could be another company. Those days are over. TransFinder said the old way of doing business doesn't work for today's busy and burdened school transportation departments. They need one partner, one solution. TransFinder has embraced this approach for years now, building award-winning solutions like Route Finder Plus, the driver app Wayfinder, parent app Stop Finder, and inventory management solution Service Finder. They also have field trip management solutions Trip Finder and Viewfinder, which provide critical routing information to other stakeholders in the district. Add to this TransFinder's award-winning hardware and industry's best support and service. You have the ingredients that make up one partner, one solution. It's not just a slogan. It's TransFinder's way of doing business. Learn more by emailing getplus@transfinder.com or calling 800-373-3609. That's 800-373-3609. Remember, one partner, one solution.
All right. Hello, nation. So we have another AASA finalist on the podcast with us today. I am pleased to welcome Dr. Kimberly Rizzo Saunders. She's the superintendent of Contoocook Valley School District in New Hampshire. And she's joined by Brian Cisneros, the business administrator for the district. So welcome, guys. Great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Great. So Kimberly, can you kind of provide the listeners with some background, what interests you in education and what was kind of your career path coming to Conval?
So I began as a classroom teacher. I did several different schools and levels as a classroom teacher, and then I became an administrator. And about 15 years ago, came into central office in Conval and have been there since. I went from the assistant superintendent in Conval to the superintendent, and it's a wonderful community, and we are moving forward every day.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So what made you want to become a teacher?
So I always loved teaching. I always loved history, which is what my background was in. And when I was in graduate school at Northeastern, I had a wonderful mentor who thought that maybe the classroom was the best place for me.
That's awesome. And then I know, becoming a state superintendent and then to be considered one of the 4 finalists, no one ever goes into education looking for praise or recognition, right? So what did it kind of mean to you, but also to your district to get that recognition?
So anytime you are honored by your peers, it is just an incredible experience. It has created the opportunity for me to really look at the district and the community and how progressive they are, but also to really look at the team that I work with, because none of us ever gets recognized for something like this by ourselves. It's always really about the team of people along with the staff, along with the community, to be a national finalist and stand on the national stage, which has just been incredible, both for me professionally and personally, but also for the district. That has been really the culmination of years of work and dedication on behalf of the team that I work with at the central office, the staff in the district, and the entire board and community.
Yeah. And so you guys, I don't know if your team was there, was down in San Diego, California in early February on the National Conference on Education. So was there anything at the conference that's kind of stood out to you?
I had a wonderful time at the conference. It was an incredible opportunity to really network with people across the country. I had some great sessions. I went to a wonderful session in the morning on Thursday and just learned a lot about the importance of advocating for public education and the importance of advocating for our students, for equitable resources, and for a strong, high-quality public education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that they had a lot of sessions on artificial intelligence too. So curious, just throwing it out there from a superintendent standpoint. And Brian, if you want to jump in, are you guys seeing AI in your roles? Are you guys using that at all?
We sometimes use AI. I do think that AI has both the potential to really improve outcomes, particularly in transportation, but also across the board for students if we learn to leverage it correctly, and if we learn to teach our students how to use it ethically and well.
Yeah, I think that's a big point that you just made, using it ethically and instead of just copy paste or having AI write articles.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's kind of pivot here and talk a little bit more about Conval. Can you guys provide, some general information about the district and then kind of jump into the transportation operations?
Sure. So our district is the largest geographic district in the state of New Hampshire. We are 250 square miles, and transportation-wise, our buses travel 3,200 miles a day. We are located in the southwestern part of the state, and we are a typical New Hampshire northern town. We have significant weather. The majority of our roads are actually dirt roads that we have to consider the status of and condition of when in bad weather all the time.
Yeah, and I know you guys contract out with Student Transportation of America, and you've been doing that, I want to say, since like 2006. So what has that partnership kind of looked like over the years?
It's been a great partnership. They have a phenomenal local person who I talk to often at 4:30 in the morning. So you always want to get along well with that person. And she really helps act as a liaison with road agents, with towns about road conditions, and is a great partner in our transportation.
Yeah, I know sometimes she's the first person that you call in the morning during those inclement weather days.
Yeah, she's my first phone call or I'm hers. And that usually starts, like I said, around 4:15, 4:30, particularly if we can't make that call the night before.
Mm-hmm. So making those decisions, on weather, is that something that's like, okay, buses aren't safe to travel, we can't do this?
So it is not just about buses. Mm-hmm. So really, when you're talking about 250 square miles, 3,200 miles of transportation or driving, you have to consider all sorts of things. So for instance, it could be raining in one of my towns. And because we have 2 mountains in our district, it could be blizzard-like conditions in another one. So we have to be really careful about balancing what is happening across the district weather-wise. We also have to consider the fact that we have students who are driving sometimes for the first time in conditions that they have never experienced before. And at the end of the day, the only thing that we really think about when we make those decisions is, will students be safe? Mm-hmm. Because it's always easy to make that call from the comfort of your recliner, but if your kid is on that bus that just slid backwards, it becomes a lot less easy.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a huge aspect of it. And you guys are running propane?
We run propane, yes.
Okay, so what has that experience been like, Brian, if you want to jump in?
Well, the first benefit is obviously we're driving well over 3,000 miles a day, so we use a lot of fuel. I mean, just to put it in perspective, it's the equivalent of driving from here to California, New Hampshire to California each day. On top of that, we have great fluctuations in weather. So if you have diesel buses and you have the below zero temperatures that we have on a regular basis almost every night, that becomes a challenge with diesel buses. With propane, we don't have that. So our warm-up time is a little bit quicker. Maintenance is a little bit different, but it's still not bad. And we buy so much propane, we actually get it at about a third of the price of diesel fuel. There's so many variables in the school district for costs and expenses. This is at least one that we have very good control over, which helps us budgeting, not passing that, the volatility of that off to the taxpayers. But it's really, it really helps us operate a lot more efficiently by using propane. I mean, people have tried to, sell us on electric buses. That's the new, shiny object. But the problem is with the amount of miles we drive and the weather we have, it's just not efficient for us. It's very, very difficult to get an electric bus up and over a mountain without losing a lot of the power. And if they stop on the side of the road and they lose power, we can't just come by with with some fuel and fuel them up. So there's a lot of challenges that go along with it, but having the propane is actually one of our biggest assets because it just allows us to control some of the variables that we normally can't control.
Mm-hmm. And so all your route buses are propane?
About 90% of them.
Okay. And when did you guys as a district decide to make that switch? Is that something that you worked with the contractor on, or has it kind of always been in place?
Kimberly would know better than me.
When the contractor was getting ready to replace their fleet, that was part of the negotiation, was for them to move to propane-based buses for us.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I believe that was in 2016.
Okay. So not quite 10 years you guys have been running it, but almost.
Almost.
All right. Thanks for the great interview. We are going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. This week's Green Tip is brought to you by Propane, the energy for everyone. Did you know that school buses fueled by propane can help you reduce emissions in your community while saving you money? Propane school buses have a lower average carbon intensity than electric school buses over their lifetime by more than half, and they emit up to 96% less nitrogen oxide than diesel buses. All this from fleets with the lowest total cost of ownership. It's no wonder propane is the most widely used alternative fuel for school buses. Learn more at betterourbuses.com. That's betterourbuses.com.
Okay. And then I know with contracting, communication is a huge piece and aspect of that. So how do you guys on the administration side ensure that there's communication between the district, the contractor? I know you guys have a location manager who's on site. So how's that relationship?
From my perspective, it's excellent. I'm one phone call away from calling them, whether it's something good or something bad. Both Kimberly and I can pick up the phone at any minute and call them, and they answer. And same thing with us, because they need us as much as we need them. Mm-hmm. So if there's an issue to deal with, whether it's a bus accident or an emergency we have to deal with, we have, if we have an emergency that we have to deal with, where maybe we have to evacuate a school quickly, that's where it really becomes important, because everything kind of gets put on hold, and we go in and we have to move the kids to another school because of some type of emergency. And it becomes very difficult when you have a district that's a fifth the size of Rhode Island. It's not like all the buses happen to be centrally located all the time. At the end of the day, the beginning of the day, they are, but during the day, they're all over the place. We have kids going to schools outside the district. We have vocational schools outside the district. We have other types of transportation needs. And having that open line of communication is extremely important. And the fact that Kimberly and I can reach out to our manager at any point is crucial, because without it, I think we would fail miserable.
Yeah. And I know during COVID-19, one of your guys' big initiatives was continuing to pay your contractor. And we kind of saw that in reporting with STN, as some people decided not to, and then lost all the drivers. And then when school came back. So why was that decision so important for you guys?
Well, I think that when you are talking about the geographic area that we're covering, one of the things that we were particularly worried about was how were we going to make sure that our students still got the nutrition that they needed. So we talked to the bus company and said, we will continue to pay the contract as long as you, A, keep your people employed, don't lay them off, and two, that you help us with these deliveries that happen. And it was just a phenomenal experience. Some of our bus drivers were the only people our children saw outside of their immediate family, and they were even just looking out through the window. So for many of our students, the bus driver became kind of that sense of normalcy outside of this really non-normal situation that was going on for them. Mm-hmm. And our buses delivered lunches to anyone who wanted them, delivered meals. They delivered our 68 hours of hunger packages. And they even oftentimes delivered textbooks or necessary supplies. So it really was an incredible partnership. We couldn't have done it without our transportation company. And we felt really good about continuing to make sure bus drivers were being paid during COVID. A group of people that in a lot of parts of the country became unemployed really quickly. Mm-hmm. And so that was definitely a point of pride for our district and for our transportation company.
And it probably felt good for the bus drivers too, because so many of us were forced to stay home. So this gave them a chance to get out and see the community and still have that connection.
Yeah.
So kind of, jumping back to weather, but looking at, virtual and COVID-19, have you guys utilized any virtual days because you were able to go virtual? If you can't go physically to class, have you looked at doing virtual school on those days?
So our community, after the COVID experience, felt really strongly about having students in school. As a matter of fact, they felt so strongly that we actually came back in September of 2020 under really we had a whole plan on how to return students to school. Students were in pods. Actually, a lot of it was based on busing and geographic location. And we just made sure that students were able to be in school. So we have since then have not taken advantage of virtual days. We have the capacity to, but the community's been pretty clear that they would rather have their children in school with a teacher.
I would add, too, it's such a rural district that internet service is not as, a lot of people take it for granted. Some of our rural areas, they either don't have that, they're using DSLs, they're using really old style or slow systems that just may not be effective for them, which I think was probably part of the reason why parents really wanted the kids back, because they just weren't getting an effective education at home with a laptop getting online. Because cell service is somewhat spotty throughout the district, too, between the 250 square miles and 2 mountains, and it's full of challenges.
Have you guys looked at Wi-Fi hotspots for school buses?
That is something that, STA has talked about that because of our reception out here. Even with some repeaters, we definitely don't have the capacity that other places with less geographic challenges or geological challenges would have.
Okay. And then I know when we were talking for the article, the driver shortage was kind of a challenge for you guys. And I think you said you're around 22 drivers short. So how are you navigating that? What does that kind of look like?
Well, what we've had to do this year is we've consolidated a lot of bus runs. So kids are spending a little bit longer on the road. We try to limit that. We draw the line usually about 45 minutes. But it gets to be very difficult, especially if there's traffic, weather, construction, things like that, which there is a lot of. Once when you have dirt roads, you have some serious rainstorms, you can have roads that are washed out. So what we've done is, some smaller towns only have one bus that brings everyone to school, rather than 2 or 3 that we used to use. So that's why the relationship with the vendor was so important, because she was able to, because of our rural nature, the software that they usually use does not work, because there's certain ways you can go, certain ways you can't. Some areas have low-hanging branches. You can't get a bus under them because they're extremely rural, and you need to be able to work with her and basically do it out on paper. What is the most effective way to pick up or drop off kids, because it just was not physically possible. I mean, we're working together as hard as we can to get new people in. We did get some this year, but it's going to be obviously, it's a nationwide shortage, but, it's an issue that we're going to be working on probably for several years to come, and won't be stopping that push for a long time.
What are some of your recruiting strategies?
We do mailers. We have signs on every school, on all the main roads in town. Every single newsletter that goes out in this district has an advertisement for school bus drivers. I mean, anything that goes out to the public has something to do with a bus driver. We'll bring it up at meetings. It's whatever means of communication we can get, we do. And, it takes a lot of contacts just to get one person to answer. And I would argue you probably have to touch 2,500 people just to get one person to actually pick up the phone or send an email.
Wow.
That's how we have to do it. It's just get as many tentacles out as you can, touch as many people, and just get them into our contracted service provider so they can start the process. And the process of being a bus driver is not, it's not something that happens in a week. It's a long process. There's background checks, there's training. You have to have your CDL license or at least get one. You have to get your bus driver endorsement. There's drug testing. There's all types of things that they have to do. So it's not as easy to start as you would at probably any other job, which means, you get through the process and you get through, usually you get a pretty good employee who lasts a long time. But just getting them through that system is the biggest challenge we have.
Right. And convincing them that being a school bus driver is more rewarding than carrying packages.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will readily admit it is one of the toughest jobs out there. And I respect all our bus drivers, anyone that chooses to do that job. But it is tough. But when there's actually, if you talk to some of these bus drivers, it is very rewarding when they see the kids, get on or get off the bus and, saying hi, goodbye. It's like they're their kids, just like if they had their own family on the bus. That's the way they treat them. And it's really special to see. And it's really great, as reminds us why we do this every day.
And we have just incredible bus drivers, or STA has incredible bus drivers, and we've been really fortunate to have some of them for a really long time.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So to kind of wrap things up, any goals or initiatives for ConVal in general? Anything you guys are looking at for this year or in years to come?
Well, we will actually be putting out an RFP pretty soon for our transportation services.
Yeah, we do that every 5 years. We're also looking into possibly doing a single tier bus run in order to, to see if that will work a little more efficiently, not only saving funds, which I don't think it will, but being able to start the high school a little bit later and get everyone on the same, just kind of get a little more efficient on the transportation. It's one of the things we've been looking at. It's a challenge with a shortage of bus drivers, but that's something we're looking into. We don't know if it's going to happen because we're in the analysis stage right now, but it's something that a lot of other districts have gone to because there's been a lot of studies out there as far as a larger state start time for high schoolers. Plus, they're getting on the bus. Some of these, they're getting on the bus at 6 a.m. in the morning, 6:30 in the morning. That's pretty early. If we can bump that by about 45 minutes to an hour, it can make a huge difference. And so we're looking into that. We don't know where it's going to go, but we're in the analysis stage, and that's one of our goals in the future.
Okay. Yeah, especially probably with daylight savings times jumping around. That gets pretty early.
It does.
Right. And it is really hard because in the fall, towards the later part of the fall, we do have children getting off the bus and it is dark. So it really has become essential for us to consider kind of those parameters of our bus routes and how we can better serve our students, and particularly our teenage students who need more sleep.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for jumping on, Kimberly and Brian. I've appreciated the conversation, and congrats again to you, Kimberly, for being among the final four.
Well, thank you so much. It's really been an honor, and thank you for having us on today. It was a great session.
A special thanks to Ryan, Taylor, Kimberly, Brian. Thanks a lot, guys. Wonderful conversation today. Appreciate you guys joining the episode. We also appreciate our sponsors, TransFinder, First Student, and the Propane Education Research Council, also known as PERC. Guys, visit stnonline.com for all the latest news and analysis on the school transportation industry. If you haven't seen it, check out that March issue. Really great edition this month. Go on that magazine tab, click it. We'd love to have you enjoy the latest edition of school transportation news. Guys, don't forget you can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to pods. We got a new episode every week for you, nation. So we'll see you next week real soon. We love you.